Erella is a force of nature, just bigger in all aspects of her personality than virtually anyone I know.
How did I meet Erella? I was busy moving into my own house, and I looked across the street and I saw a strange looking house, flowers and a collection of artifacts that I wasn't so sure about.
I'm Erella Ganon, and I'm an artist, and I live here with Celeste, my daughter. So how's it looking there?
Brown.
This is my teenager. We live here and we cook together. We live in Toronto, in the Dufferin Grove area. It's a working class neighborhood of Portuguese and Italian and Brazilian and all different cultures working together. And it's one of those communities that actually does work. I've been very involved with the park that's near my house. A few years ago, a woman named Georgie figured out how to make a cob structure. Celeste and I were leads in building the mosaic. So we used a lot of our old dishes, and now we have the cob structure, and it's very much a part of the park, and it's really important. Not a lot of time and a whole lot to do, you know. We're having a big party today across the street at my neighbor's place. This time last year I was very ill, and all my friends got together and took awesome care of me.
How are you?
This is Eric.
Ready? Ooh, we're here, everybody.
We came to Canada when I was about 5. My dad was born in Cairo, Egypt. My mom was born in Brussels, Belgium. Both of them had a really creative way of looking at things, and they really appreciated art and human interaction. I think that's what I got from both of them. I was a really good student, so I got on independent studies. I didn't really have to attend the lessons as long as I could maintain a good enough average. So I really spent a lot of my time on Yorkville working there. The Riverboat was a coffee house in the 70s, and I worked there from 1973 to 78, so when I was about 13 to about 18. A lot of famous folk singers of our time performed there. Yorkville was really a lively place, you know. There were still hippies selling paper flowers on the street. There were art galleries and used clothing shops and all sorts of things. And I went over to Europe for a couple years, and then I came back here and went to art college. I was working at Yuck Yucks when they just opened their first comedy cabaret. Jeff Silverman, who was one of the people who was running it with Mark Breslin, was starting a TV series called The All Night Show with Chuck the Security Guard. And that was my first taste of media life. The same crew ended up getting another gig with C Channel, which was one of the first cable TV stations. Then CKLN went on the air, and I worked for CKLN for a while. I was on 3 times a day talking about what was going on in town, and I also did a music show. From that, I think I went to CFNY and CBC, and I was a music critic at Now magazine. Meanwhile, CKLN didn't pay much, if anything. So I was also waitressing at the Cameron at the time. And the Cameron, was just starting up, a collaboration between the arts community and the music community. And that's when sort of Queen Street was happening. I also worked at the Crash and Burn for the summer of '77. It was Canada's first punk club. I had a few bands. In the early '80s, when I was in bands, you didn't have to be good, which was great because I wasn't. I worked in holography a lot. Claudette Abrams, Laura Kikauka, and I were the first women who really got into holography and learning about lasers and making 3D images in the early 80s. Performance art and video. I was sort of always a part of different kinds of things as it was starting up. In 1985-86, I was very close friends with Andy Fabo and Tim Jocelyn, who were a couple of my favorite Queen Street artists. Tim got AIDS, and it was at a time it was when it was called ARC, AIDS-related complex, and nobody had heard of AIDS. Man, it was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. And so a group of people started to get this benefit going. The benefit wasn't really coming together, and I was asked to come in and sort of make it happen. We raised $31,000 profit in 1986, and it turned out that Ooga Booga benefit for Tim was Canada's first AIDS benefit. And so I was introduced to June Colwood, and the money that Tim didn't use got donated to this group that started Casey House. Molly Johnson started the Kumbaya Foundation, and I worked on that as well. I think we raised close to $750,000, and that's Molly taking it to the next level. And Denise Donlan brought in much music, and it went national. Tim died December 10th, 1986, and then Handsome Ned died January 10th, 1987. So it was a pretty difficult time in there. People die, and it breaks my heart, and I miss them. But if you think of them, it's how you sort of keep them alive, right? So if I'm sitting in the garden, and I'll think of my friend Tim who died, Tim is in the garden with me. I know I sound kind of nuts that way, but it's sort of how I see things. Since I was a kid, I've always kept an illustrated journal. And it's a very different kind of way to look at memory and how subjective it is. Like, I have tons of these kinds of sketchbooks, and I fill them all the time with my drawings. I'm an expert on Erella's life. I only know what I personally have experienced. I do witness my life. It's like I live a reality show. It doesn't need to be put on TV or anything. And it's so compelling. I have to draw a picture of it to sort of put that aside, Like that picture of me and my father, holding my dad's hand when he died. I took the mask off him, and I just felt, life pass. And I really wanted to remember that. I think really the art is evidence of my life. In many cases, the art isn't necessarily the painting. It's You know, the emotion that it brings up, it's kind of magic to be able to draw something that can conjure something real in the body, mind of a stranger. I think I've done 40 or 50 different titles of these little books, long before zines and graphic novels, because I liked the scale. When I was pregnant, I had a series, I think, of 6 or 8 little books, and I called them The Adventures of My Inner Child. And, you know, people would say to me, "Oh, are you having any weird cravings for pickles and ice cream?" And I'd sort of get tired of telling the same story over and over, so that if they want to know how I'm feeling, here's a book. I really like puns, so I had a whole series of puns, you know, never a dull donut instead of never a dull moment. When I had my first brain tumor, I figured, okay, now is the time to get the vent out. And that's when I went back to my original name, Erella Ganon. And she said, "You want him to take out your brain tumor at a clinic?" I really, really don't know what I'd have done if Eric hadn't been my neighbor. I'm sure I'd be dead. He sort of came out of nowhere and saved the day, and all my friends call him Saint Eric for that reason. In the fall of '97, I was having headaches. I'd never had a headache before. And, you know, my friends would joke that, I've given plenty of headaches, but I'd never received any. I had been going to doctors, and nothing could really determine that anything was wrong with me. I went to yet another specialist, and he said, "You've got a large mass at the base of your hypothalamus, and it's going to have to come out." And then he left the room. So there's like a large waiting room. The secretaries, nurses are in the middle there. And so I got dressed. I went out there, and you know, everybody's sort of watching what's going on. And a nurse said, "So you want another appointment?" And I said, "Is that when he's going to take out my mass or hypothalamus or whatever?" And she said, "You want him to take out your brain tumor at a clinic?" And that's the first time I ever heard that I had a brain tumor. When I was waiting for that first surgery, I was really out of it. It was like I had lace curtains in front of my eyes moving like this, and I just couldn't see. Everything hurt. I just wanted my eyes shut. Meanwhile, Barbara, who I met through the internet, rallied the troops and made a schedule. And, you know, can you be counted on to wash Arella's hair? And can someone pick up Celeste from school on Tuesday? And people had an opportunity to really show their best. I made a little brochure before I went to hospital, things you shouldn't say when you're visiting a friend who's in hospital with brain surgery. And we had like a little checklist, like, it's not brain surgery, you know, it's mind over matter, now you're open-minded, mind if I cut in, all of those kinds of ridiculous things. But it sort of made it easier to come along for the ride and deal with your own misgivings. It was sort of a performance that, you know, I did the documentation for. After the surgery, they did a biopsy and they discovered that I had this very rare disease condition called Cushing's disease. Mine is a very life-threatening form of it.
I can see that this disease wants to get the better of her and she fights it, but it wears her down incrementally. More than being afraid that she's going to die, I'm afraid that she's going to be weary. And that's hard for her to be.
I give myself permission to be sick, and somehow that makes it easier. I've learned how to separate my illness from me. I have a problem with, a fatal disease. It doesn't mean that I am the disease.
She rarely talks about the fact that she's in chronic pain. Probably because if she was talking to someone else, she wouldn't find that particularly interesting. She wants to put that face out to the world.
She's been struck with so many challenges, and she fights them off like as if they're nothing.
Sometimes people ask me if I went through the why me phase. Well, I've never gone through that. In all sincerity, I can cope with it. I have the defenses.
Maybe once every 6 months or once a year, I see her just totally collapse and say, why? Why can't it just be done? Why can't I just be over with it and just get on with a normal life? And she gets out her journal, and she gets out her pen, and she does a piece of art, and then she goes and cooks something. She'll allow herself a temporary collapse, and then she'll get back to it because she's not going to wallow.
It's hard to know if my creativity was affected because, it's not like my creativity is in a box. It's a part of my life. It definitely affected my ability to earn a living, no question. In September of 2007, I was really broke. Our house was in a state of disrepair. Furnace died. Water heater exploded, the roof in my bedroom fell down, and I was not well enough. My doctor found that, yes, I had a new big honkin' brain tumor, and this time it was on the jugular vein, and because of where it was, nobody would perform surgery on it.
She had been told after the first surgery that they might not be able to do surgery again because it might damage the optic nerve and that she might lose her sight or that she might lose other functions.
Through the internet, I did some research. I found there is one surgeon in all of Canada that could perform this kind of surgery. So I called his office. He wasn't taking on new patients.
She'll pick up the phone and call the doctor's office 37 times in a row until she gets to talk to who she wants to talk to.
Through different contacts, we managed to get him to agree to doing the surgery. But we'd been living in this house for over a year without a flushing toilet. It didn't have a place for me to recover.
Eventually the house became almost uninhabitable.
The house was an obstacle course of stuff and memories and junk.
Truly creative people are always collecting because they always can think of another use for something. She can pick up a spoon and say, oh, look, wouldn't this make a fabulous pair of earrings? And when she was healthier, she could bring home things. She could be the magpie. She might find it on the street, turn it into something beautiful and give it away. But as her health changed, all those little baubles and things that came into the house stayed in the house, which jeopardized the house and made it difficult for her to convalesce in the house, which is why the whole project of the renovation ended up being a community project. Her life is so tied into story. It was hard for her to let the objects go because each object was a story. It was really scary for her to give over the control of her personal space.
Until it got to the point where she realized with the surgery that was coming up, she really needed to do something. And she said, okay, look, I'm ready. I want help.
So my friends sort of put me and my daughter on a train to, my friend Tanya's in Ann Arbor. And then everybody sort of came here and took over the house. Dozens of my most amazing friends carved sections out of their lives to do a lot of really unpleasant work.
I was sort of the focal point for the effort, if you will, but there were several core people in her group that performed some of the most uncomfortable jobs, you know, of donning a mask, donning gloves, and getting down there and pulling stuff out of a, you know, wet and moldy basement. And it's, of course, as soon as you break a wall open, it's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
Erella had been giving to various communities, and it was a chance to give back a little. I don't know that she honestly expected that 30 people would. In fact, I know she didn't, because at times she was emotionally overwhelmed by the generosity of people's time and commitment.
I mean, honestly, everybody who helped out is, you know, a bright shining light in their own right. There were a lot of people that I knew very well that did a lot of work, but there were a lot of people I hardly knew or I knew in the community, and that were here every day. They were having a big party today. I've invited a lot of my favorite people in the whole world. Last year they all got friendly, helping to take care of me, and they became friends with one another, and so now it's kind of nice that they're all meeting and mixing.
This is Tanya, and when I was really sick, Celeste and I stayed with Tanya. And this is Barry, and she's been my best friend since I was Celeste's age.
There are certain people in any community who are nodal points around whom lots of folks gather, and she happens to be one of them. We live in an age where everything is so isolated by technologies like Twitter and you know, social networks, and they give you the illusion of connection. But this is flesh and blood connection. This is the original Facebook. It's true. It's the original Facebook.
So, like, were you born a terrible person, or has it just happened over the years?
Oh, I learned from you.
She's really generous and smart. She's really supportive towards me and like stuff I want to do, which is really good. She taught me how to do a lot of like art stuff. So last March break I made this video, so it's like about me and a duck.
Celeste is a big part of my life. I'm her, you know, only parent. I remember with my first surgery, it was very difficult. I had to keep her involved.
She's confident, makes me confident, and we give each other the strength to take care of each other, and we can handle anything.
Having been through it 3 times now, not just twice, but 3 times, 3 brain surgeries, 3 rounds of post-op recuperation, and always being on the pharmaceutical yo-yo of trying to balance her hormones.
I don't think I've ever seen her give up hope, which is incredible.
When I'm really facing darkness, I think that it's got to be pretty dark in order to see the stars, and that somehow gives me faith for some reason. I think of the metaphor of an oyster, you know, and I think about an oyster, you know, who finds like a piece of dirt and, you know, keeps on pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until finally there's a pearl there. A lot of times people give up before that piece of dirt turns into a pearl.
Oh, baby, I believe in this love. It comes a little like a soft rain falling from the heavens above.
You read these personality profiles and the way different people manifest themselves in the world and the way they use their skills and their power. And she is someone who, if she's met someone, she never forgets. If she's made a friend, she never forgets.
Once you go to the trouble of liking someone, if you like them, why are you ever going to unlike them? It's sort of like having a garden. with a lot of different flowers. A garden that only has one kind of flower is not really as much delight.
It's exciting for her to see people get together and interact.
I sort of always have been a kind of a conduit. You know, I'm very good at remembering what gifts different people have and being able to connect different people to one another.
It comes a little like a soft rain falling from the heavens above.
If you just saw her on the street, you wouldn't really realize that there was such a breadth of energy and kind of love in that body.
It's like I'm so full up with love that I can pass it along. And so I pass it along in everything that I do. I guess that I like to live my life as though anyone who comes to the door is my friend.
Every morning I feel